afternoon to you and welcome to the very first episode of the Daily Service Delivery Gauge on SABC 1 via SABC News. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Siyajabula ubanani, I'm Criselda Lewis.
Sinibingelela sinamukele igama lami ngumxolisi wakwaMasango, and of course signing for us namhlanje uTriforsa wakwaNtswelengwe. Now sinibingelele nonke nani emakhaya, sijabula ukuba nani namhlanje kulelo hlelo. Now lapho sobe sihlaziya khona ezokhetho ahead of the local government elections coming up on the 1st of November. Now remember, this show is all about you and your accounts on the ground. That's why we encourage you to partake on all the conversations we're having on the show. Of course, tweet us on @SABC News using the hashtag SDGageDaily as well as hashtag SABC News. Of course, do send us your WhatsApp voice notes as well as videos on 083-272-8341. This is the daily edition of the Service Delivery Gauge, and it starts now.
Well, thank you very much, Mxolisi, and thank you very much to you at home for joining us for our very first episode of the Daily Service Delivery Gauge. So this afternoon, we're asking you, what is your understanding and knowledge of the upcoming elections? Do you know the difference between the ones coming up on the 1st of November, that's the local government elections, and the national elections? Do you even know who your councillor is? Do you know what he or she does? So our SABC News reporters Anka North-Nachel and Nosipho Mncube took to the streets of Umtata in the Eastern Cape to find out more.
With the lead up to municipal elections, parties are already going head to head. But how much do South Africans really know about the local elections? Do they know their councillors and what their jobs are? We are in Umtata in the Eastern Cape and decided to find out for ourselves. Let's go.
What's the difference between national and local elections?
The local elections are a bit different from the national elections because here in local elections we are getting a chance to speak with our councillors. Whilst on national there is a difference, there is huge difference between the two.
Do you know what the difference is between national elections and local elections?
No, I don't know.
Do you know who your councillor is?
I don't.
Okay, so you don't know. Do you know the job of a councillor?
I really don't. I'm not into that.
The job of my councillor is to develop my rural area because I'm from the rural areas, and they do promise to deliver services like the road, the maintenance of the road, the providence of the electricity, and also providing facilities like the community halls.
Do you know who your current councillor is?
I'm not sure since I'm not here. I'm not living here. Yeah, I'm here with academics only. So I don't know my council.
And your current councillor of where you come from?
Who's that guy? Renkonyen. Yeah, something like that.
So there you have it. It's a mixed bag, with some knowing what the local elections are all about, and others not so much. I am Anka North-Nachel for the Service Delivery Gauge, the Daily Show, in Umtata, Eastern Cape.
Well, at the back of that insert, it's just under a month to the local government polls on November 1st, well, 27 days to be exact. Now, the local government is at the coalface of service delivery. My co-host, Criselda Lewis, had a conversation with SALGA COO Lance Joel on the importance of the upcoming elections. Take a look.
Well, the importance of the elections is really once more an opportunity for South Africans to exercise their constitutional right to go out and elect once more their public representatives. Some 2.5 years ago, we went to the polls to elect national and provincial representatives. And now there's an opportunity for communities to elect from those amongst them, those that live with them, those that see their conditions on a daily basis and see the conditions that they live under. There's an opportunity for them to identify the people that will be their voices over the next 5 years.
But Mr. Joel, South Africa is prone to violent service delivery protests. What is wrong in your view as SALGA?
Well, Criselda, when you look at the statistics that are issued on an annual basis, recently in March this year, the Stats SA issued the service delivery figures, and it indeed shows that there's an increasing number of services being extended to communities, whether it is electricity, whether it is water, whether it is refuse removal. Those are services that municipalities are receiving. What is really at the bottom of the challenges that find expression and ultimately leads to service delivery protests is the lack of communication and interaction with communities around those services that are indeed being extended. And certainly from a SALGA perspective, we hold the view that with increased engagements, increased interactions with communities, we would be able to mitigate against many of these service delivery protests.
Mr. Joel, perhaps some could argue that part of the problem at local level is that there is a lack of credible public representatives. Do you think that that is part of the problem?
Well, the part of the democratic right of electing representatives of your choice is the reality that you would then elect those that are appropriately, in your understanding, qualified, experienced candidates. So when we say there are credibility issues, that has been a criticism laid at the doorstep of local government. But here's an opportunity for members of the community to really identify appropriately skilled, qualified and experienced people to indeed be their representative voice, and from time to time hold them accountable for what they have promised to execute on your behalf. So the elections present that opportunity for us to renew, and in so doing identify the right people to lead us at the local government level.
With local government being at the coal face of service delivery, what do you say to the new voter, or even to the disgruntled voter who has lost complete hope?
Well, the beauty of a democratic society is the opportunity that is presented to you every 5 years to assess the progress made by your public representatives, and indeed give you an opportunity to provide a new mandate. So I would say to a new voter, I would say to a disgruntled voter, here is an opportunity for you to renew the mandate, and in renewing the mandate, identify and vote for what you think is an appropriately qualified, skilled and representative voice on your behalf. So it's an opportunity for you to introduce change should you feel there's a need for change.
But I mean, you have, for example, the Auditor General's report, which is quite scathing on wasteful expenditure. How so? Yet it seems like these very services are bypassing the poor. What is SALGA doing about this?
Well, certainly the Auditor General paints a picture that in some municipalities there's good progress being made, and municipalities are able to account for the use of the resources. But indeed, as you correctly stated, the Auditor General draws our attention to a number of irregularities that find expression within municipalities around financial management. And as SALGA, certainly at the core of our response to the Auditor General's report is to demand consequence management and accountability, where indeed fingers are pointed at individuals or groups of individuals. And so we would be advancing that agenda of calling for consequence management and accountability across our municipalities.
How does the voter hold accountable those they've put into power, in particular where the result is coalition governments that could possibly arise out of hung municipalities?
Well, certainly coalition governments is not new out of the 2016 elections. It's been with us for the past 3 terms of office, so it's not a new development, but certainly it was a more pronounced development in 2016, particularly as it affected a number of metropolitan municipalities. Now, the consequence of, unfortunately, a coalition government is there's no outright winner, and therefore political parties must work together, and political parties with different manifestos, with different mandates from their voters. It does become difficult when they have to work together and also be held accountable, because there's essentially no accountability measures when you look at coalition governments, and it becomes quite complex, but it's an area, I think, perhaps from a policy framework point of view, we must come up with a framework that will guide us on, firstly, how do we get into a coalition governments, but secondly, how do we also hold coalition governments accountable, both as the communities and but also as the voters that voted for those respective political parties. How are they and can they be held accountable for what happens during the period of the coalition government?
And of course, joining me now is SABC News specialist researcher Maswele Ralibona to help us crunch some numbers and hard facts leading up to the elections. Maswele, it's great to have you on the program. Welcome to the Daily Service Delivery Gauge. I want us to talk about the metros and what's up for grabs.
Thank you, Mkolisi. Remember, when we talk about the metros, in South Africa we've got 8 metros in 5 provinces, of which in 2016, 4 of them didn't have an outright winner. Let's go straight into city of Ekurhuleni, where the voters roll right now is sitting at 1.5 million, and 224 seats are up for grabs, of which 112 of them are ward councillors seats. Here we also learned that in the past 5 years, Mzwandile Masina, the current mayor, managed to keep it together, whereas in other parts where they went into coalition governments, they completely failed to keep it together for 5 years.
Let's take our viewers through the next slide, and it's the city of eThekwini.
eThekwini, the reason why we put eThekwini here is that in the past 10 years, the ANC has been shedding votes here from 64% in 2014, and right now, given the previous elections, the ANC is sitting at 54%. The voters roll there is at 1.9 million, 220 seats up for grabs, and 111 of them are ward seats.
All right, we've got the next slide, which is the city of Tshwane.
It gets even more interesting here, Mkolisi. The city of Tshwane has had 3 mayors since 2016, of which in between the provincial government of Gauteng did put them under administration, and then it was reversed by the courts. At this point, the voters roll is sitting at 1.5 million, 214 seats up for grabs, and 107 wards.
Oh wow, we've got the city of Joburg up next, which was hit by a double tragedy with the mayors. Talk us through that.
A very sad moment in the city of Joburg, because in the past three months there's been 2 deaths of the sitting mayors. The voters roll here is sitting at 2.2 million, 200 seats up for grabs. This is the biggest number of voters in the whole country, actually, because the 2.2 million other provinces, they don't even make. I will give you an example. In Northern Cape, the whole province, they've got the voters roll is sitting at 600 and something thousand voters. So the wards there are 135, and whoever wants to get an outright win must get more than 135 seats in the council.
So as we get to our last slide, which is NMB, another hotly contested metro, and we've seen political parties hot on the trail. Talk us through that.
Very sad here also, because you will remember that in 2016, after the DA went into coalition with other parties, including the EFF, even though EFF says it was not a coalition, Trolip took over, Afol Trolip, the former DA leader. He was the mayor there, and then after EFF leader Julius Malema went down there and contested against Trolip. Things changed to an extent that Trolip was removed, and the UDM leader at that time, Mungameli Bobani, took over. May his soul rest in peace. And then at this point, the voters' roll is sitting at 583,457, and the seats up for grabs, 120. You need more than 60 to get an outright majority in the city. The current mayor is from the DA. And so far, we will see what happens.
Yeah, before we let you go, just a few seconds, quickly, I want you to tell us, what's the sense on the ground? People struggling with their day-to-day bread and butter issues. What's the sense on the ground?
Kolisi, we've been crisscrossing the whole country as the service delivery gauge and SABC News overall. The sense on the ground, let me bring it to the metros and the cities.
Yeah, just a quick one with the metros. Yeah.
The problem in the metros is service delivery. But when you look at the core issue is economic migration. Many of us coming from Limpopo, Mpumalanga and everywhere else to seek greener pastures in the metros, which makes it difficult for the sitting governments to plan. I'll give you an example of housing. If I left Limpopo in 2016, and then I'm 5 years old in Gauteng, which means now I'm looking for the housing allocation from the city.
Well, that's our SABC News specialist researcher, Maswele Ralibona, helping us there crunch the numbers. Criselda's on standby to give us another item on the program. Criselda, what's next?
Well, thank you very much indeed. So now we continue our conversation with SABC News senior reporter Ofentse Sedimo. Ofentse is in the metro of Tshwane in Gauteng, a metro which is expected to be a battleground amongst the top 4 political parties at the upcoming local government elections. So the city of Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality, classified as a Category 8 municipality by the Municipal Demarcation Board in terms of Section 4 of the Local Government Municipal Structures Act. So that's established on the 5th of December 2000 through the integration of various municipalities and councils that had previously served the greater Pretoria area and surrounding areas. Ofentse Sedimo now joins us live. Ofentse, the municipality been dogged by political upheaval. I guess the race is on.
Absolutely, Criselda. Very thank you much for that. And as you rightfully mentioned, there's a lot of political upheaval here in Tshwane, which has actually left the residents on the ground disillusioned. Now, a question has been posed as to whether these circumstances could be a window of opportunity, especially for independent candidates who are actually vying independently for these local elections. Well, I am joined right now by Professor Lisiba Tefo to iron this issue out. Thank you so much for your time, Prof. If you can just tell us, do you believe maybe that, there is an opportune moment, especially now that, the big parties have been compromised? Some, there's been scandals like VBS, Glad Africa, to list just a few.
Look, this is the right move. This is the right direction the country ought to have taken since 2004. When the amendment was supposed to have been effected, read the Electoral Act, so that we have a constituency-based system whereby the independent can raise their hand and contest as individuals. That's one. Two, it is important to acknowledge that the mood in the country is for change and substantial change. And the Constitutional Court decision, I think, has created an opportunity for us to effect a meaningful change to the Electoral Act. And yes, the independents stand a chance, a fairly good chance to make inroads, especially in the 3 main parties, the EFF, the DA, and the ANC. But it's not that their victory that matters most. For me, what is important is what they are going to do with that victory, with that vote, when they get into the councils. Unless people begin to appreciate how the coalition governments, we are headed in that direction. I don't see us getting clear winners going forward in this election and even in the national one. But people must begin to appreciate that if indeed it is about the people, it is about servant leadership, then they must appreciate that there will be give and takes. There will have to be recognition that there are the first among the equals, but at the same time, it is about the people.
If I may just interject there, so sorry about that, Prof. We only have limited time. Coalitions have been there in Tshwane, but they didn't work because some parties were trying to score political points. Whenever there was supposed to be a budget vote, they would walk out and there wouldn't be a quorum. So do you think in the foreseeable future, these kind of political arrangements would work in running the country?
They should work if the people are prepared to work. That's the point I'm making. But people are self-serving. They are about themselves. The tragedy of Africa, elect me into office so that I can enrich myself, or I can benefit or use that as a vehicle of self-enrichment. And I say to you, and to all those who are listening, yes, coalitions can work, but they don't work at times because people don't want them to work. In Britain, there is a coalition government. Many are not aware. For years, same applies to Germany. But I'm saying, because political office is more paying than the private sector in South Africa and other spaces, this country, unless it revisits that, it is doomed. A society in which, political office pays more than the private sector is doomed.
Thank you so much, Prof. So sorry to cut you there. Well, as you heard, that's Professor Lesiba there for actually saying that for the country to work and through coalitions, there should be maturity among the political parties and the independent candidates that are going to vie for these local government elections. And with that, it's back to studio.
Well, thank you very much to SABC senior reporter Fences Stimo, speaking to political analyst Professor Lesiba Tifo. We'll have a lot more of that as the program progresses on later days.
Well, Griselda, we've been asking our viewers to, of course, interact with us and tell us what's on their minds.
Yep.
And we have been asking you to get in touch with us and just share your views. And of course, the hashtag is SDGageDaily and hashtag SABC News. And remember sending us your 30-second video clips on the number 083-272-8341.
All right, let's take a look at some of those tweets. Now, Senior Chalitsi Makatu says the same people who looted VBS, they have the audacity to come to a national TV and lie to the masses. Bembet District Municipality has proved to us that it was led by incompetent people who has the ambition of enriching themselves.
We are taking another one from Iman Suleiman, who says, please visit the Northwest Province, Ramoteri Mulelwa local municipality. And of course, we have our teams all up covering all the grounds and lengths and depths of the country. Yeah, Lebon Vivant says, when are you focusing on Mfuleni? Or have you already? We'll certainly give you a lot of that, Knox, man. We know that we're covering various areas, not just here in Gauteng, but of course around the country. So we will definitely have a focus on that on one of our programs here on SABC News. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, of course. And it seems like we are out of town. Do you still have time for another tweet? All right. It seems like we are out of time indeed. You know what? Our first day is done of making sure that our viewers are dotting the I's and crossing out the T's, so they make sure that their checklist is well informed when they go cast their ballots. I'm so excited that we've done that. Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Really a pleasure to share the first episode with you. I'm Griselda Lewis. And I'm Xolisi Masango. Till next time, take care. Good afternoon.